Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dudes and dudettes. Thanks for listening to today's show. Just want to let you know that Two NerdSkis and a Podcast officially now has a YouTube channel. So, if for whatever reason you can't listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, YouTube is your best spot. Oh, and you can also like and comment on the videos too. But don't forget to subscribe. Now, time for Eric and Jeff to lay the nerdy on. Go for it, boys.
Alright, you primitive screwheads, listen up. It's time for Two NerdSkis and a Podcast! Next level.
Around these parts, Kong is king. And around here, it's Two NerdSkis and a Podcast, the show where two nerdskis come together and talk about everything that's pop culture and entertainment. And welcome, everybody. My name's Eric.
This is Jeff.
And welcome back to our second part of our look at the MonsterVerse. I mentioned in the previous episode that it was called the Legendary Verse, and I'm like, that's wrong. It's the Legendary MonsterVerse. And I always thought that MonsterVerse was attached to the Universal Monster movies, and I was completely wrong when I looked it up later. So I just want to make that correction right there. But before we get there, how are you doing, sir? How's life treating you?
Life is life, man. Cannot complain too much about that.
Yeah, th- we always say life can always be better, but um, if you don't have much to complain about, you know, life sounds like it's going pretty solid. But we all have our ups and downs, but just remember, there's always something good that's going to come out of it in the long run. At least you hope so. Okay, and I'm all right too on my end. Nothing too special, just work and then come home and sleep and business and whatnot, and working on the show, and can't complain else from there. So, anyways, Jeff, what is the second installment of the legendary MonsterVerse?
Well, that would be 2017's Kong Skull Island. Now, before jumping into this, what is your personal history with King Kong?
Okay. So I know you're more of the Kong guy than I am. I haven't seen the original 1933 film. I'm sorry. I just haven't. But that's not to say I'm not interested in it. I do genuinely want to check it out at some point. I believe it's on HBO Max. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, because that's Warner Brothers' thing. And the only King Kong I've really seen is the 2005 remake with that Peter Jackson directed, and that's got who was in that? God, who was it? I know it was Adrian Brody was in that movie. I know Andy Serkis did the motion capture for King Kong in that film. Um, who else was in that movie? I'm trying to remember
Kyle,
who else.
Kyle Chandler.
Kyle. Oh, really? Was Kyle Chandler also in that movie?
Yes, he is.
And he is in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Fascinating that they
And he
brought him
will
back.
be in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah, I do
That goes
remember
to
that
show how
too.
much of a badass Kyle Chandler is, because he hung out with King Kong twice.
Oh wait, I just remembered. Jack Black's in the 2005 movie, right?
Yes, he is.
That's right. That's right. So, I mean, I've never really been much of a King Kong guy, but I mean, I do appreciate his place in cinematic history. I mean, obviously for the time that his original movie came out, that was a massive achievement in technicalities and whatnot. and then obviously the technology gets better over time, and then they remade the movie what in the 70s or the 80s, I forget.
It was in 76.
76, and I know that Jeff Bridges was in that movie. That much I remember. I remember seeing a little bit of that movie. Um, I think stop me if I'm wrong. So like I know the 2005 movie still takes place back in what the 20s, but for the 1976 film, they placed it in present day, like the 1970s. Am I
They
correct?
did, yes.
Okay, okay. So, because I remember it was a little bit more modern than than the 2005 remake, but so yeah, that's my history of Kong. I mean, it's not that I'm not interested. I do like King Kong, just not as huge as this guy can testify to. So Jeff, why don't you explain your history of King Kong?
So basically, it started with renting an old crusty VHS from my local library of the original movie, and I got obsessed with the original movie. It was one of those it was one of those creature features that I saw at just the right point in my life where it it sparked my imagination. It got me excited uh, to tell adventure stories, and the way it had all these different special effects techniques for something made in 1933. I mean, even though I had a basic idea of how the effects were done in execution, it was still able to capture my attention. And I also watched the 76 version, and I never liked it as much, but it always thought it was okay. I haven't seen it in over 10 years, so I don't remember much from it. And then I also I also watched King Kong Lives, which is fucking awful.
That
But
was that Toho. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but was that like Toho's attempt at making a sequel?
no, that was King Kong Escapes. So King
Okay.
Kong Lives is actually a sequel to the 76 version, and it has Linda Hamilton.
Oh. Wait, who
Yeah,
made that? Who made that movie?
or Linda Hamilton's in that one.
Oh, really? Did
She
not
is.
know that.
So I mean, 80s Linda Hamilton is still sexy, but even she can't save it, man. And
Wow.
and then the Peter Jackson version also has a very special place in my heart where it's kind of it's like it's the only remake that for me at least I can't definitively decide if I like the remake or the original more, because the remake came out at just the right point in my life. Like I think I was about 10, and so I was able to see this big budget uh new take on this movie that I already appreciated so much, and to see it get this big budget treatment, to see all the action figures. I played the video game that was based off
So
the
did I.
movie. Yeah, that game's so fucking fun. And so Kong has always held a special place in my heart. And when Kong Skull Island was announced, because I don't think they announced that it was connected uh to the Godzilla movie just yet. Uh, I believe that that announcement was made later down the line. So when they announced it, I just thought, eh, cool. I didn't really pay attention to it. Even when the trailers were coming out, it was just one of those movies where I knew it was coming out, and at some point I remember reading that J.K. Simmons and Michael Keaton were attached to star, but Sam Jackson and John Goodman took their places, and I kind of knew the basic premise they were going for, but didn't. Again, pretty much went into this movie blind, and coming out, damn. uh, so before I give my opinion, I'm curious what you thought of it.
Okay. So I remember when this movie came out, and I was like not as interested into it as I um probably originally was. I don't remember, but I remember watching it when it finally came to digital, and I didn't have a really good first impression of this. And I was just like, I thought it was all right. It wasn't like anything special, but and also to be honest, I wasn't truly fully invested. I just thought it was just like this movie really didn't really need to be made. It wasn't like it might because for me, I really enjoyed the 2005 movie quite a bit, and I just thought it was unnecessary that they basically just remade a new one or just made a new one just so that it's more action packed or whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I love that we're going to finally see Godzilla fight Kong, but like in the grand scheme of things, I was just like, yeah, I didn't really care for that. So I watched it again for this installment, and I kind of have my opinion's a little bit changed, a little bit. I mean, I still think it's all right. It's a fun movie, but like, I actually don't think it's too bad. It's actually yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of dumb. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I am actually. I was a little bit more invested the second time around. Maybe I don't know if it was because I was paying attention a little bit more, but I was also like, there's actually, um, it actually was pretty good in the end run, at least. I know I'm stumbling a little bit there, but yeah, I wasn't really, yeah, I wasn't invested the first time around, but the second time around, I was just like, yeah, actually, this isn't too bad. But yeah, this is how I would say this is like King Kong Vietnam War edition, if that makes any sense, because it feels like, or no, not King. It's like King Kong Apocalypse Now edition because believe me, we're gonna get into Kong, but the reason I call it Vietnam because it feels like this is what a Vietnam War movie would look like with monsters in it.
So basically, the way I perceive this movie is it's the it's the first time a Kong movie's been made that really tries something brand new with its premise and its setting. Because because there was one sequel to the original movie, Son of Kong, actually came out the exact same year, so they rushed that thing out, and it was just a cheap rehash of the first movie, pretty much. And uh, then excluding the Toho movies, the '76 remake kind of took away the fantastical elements of the original film, because it didn't have any dinosaurs. There were no, I mean, there's only one large creature on the island that's seen. It's just a generic looking giant snake, and so it took on a more grounded approach to the original story, but it kind of made for a lackluster movie in the long run. And the 2005 remake, basically, I kind of saw it as like a wider window into the world of the original movie, being that it follows the same structure but just expands on all the details. It takes place in the same year, and all the same events transpire. You just see them on you just see them on a more grand scale. And I still love the remake, like I said earlier, but in terms of uh, doing something brand new and innovative with the premise, it didn't do too much other than just create new sequences with the new technology that they're given. So uh, with those other movies, they're basically trying to pay pure respect and homage to the original movie. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the original film is an iconic masterpiece that, if you're going to even attempt to remake it, it should be done with all the greatest care and attention. But for this time around, it's I don't think there should ever be another remake of King Kong, because I feel Peter Jackson made the definitive remake.
I agree.
But Kong is such an iconic character that it would just be stupid to not let him appear in another movie again. So what I appreciate about this movie is that it's able to take King Kong and use him in a way that never has been utilized in a big budget format. And it's just a in the formation of a fun adventure B movie. And for that, what it sets out to do, just be a fun adventure B movie, blending various film genres, trying to capture trying to capture the vibe of a classic Vietnam War movie that just happens to have giant monsters. It actually blends these two elements fairly well. And though the movie, I would call this a perfect background noise movie. The so none of the characters require any significant depth. No one is really well rounded. Uh, I would honestly say you could watch this movie with the audio turned off, and you could still understand what's going on.
I Yeah, that's the way you call this background a background movie. That's kind of I'll be honest. That's kind of what my first time around with the first time I saw it was. It was really kind of background noise. It really wasn't like it was there. It was all right. And I do agree with the characters. Although I do think that the best character of the movie is John C. Riley as Marlowe. And let's get into some of our cast here. So you mentioned Samuel L. Jackson and John Goodman. So we have John Goodman. He's playing William Bill Randa. So you find out that he's part of Monarch, which is the organization that you first meet in Godzilla 2014, and they
Totally not
investigate.
Shield.
Yeah, yeah, totally not Shield. So they're this version's universe's version of Shield. So they look into all the giant monsters and whatnot, anything that cannot be explained through conventional methods. So he's one of the higher ups, and he's got Houston Brooks, played by Corey Hawkins, as his assistant, that they're going to go to Skull Island to take a look at. And they've recruited a whole bunch of people. And one of these people is Samuel Jackson as Preston Packard, or as I like to say, Sam Jackson trying to play Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, because he's very bitter about losing Vietnam. And through this movie, he decides that taking on Kong, this is how he's going to like win back American pride or whatnot. um, you also have Tom Hiddleston, aka good old Loki himself, playing James Conrad, who's like an ex British Special Air Service captain. Who's like the tracker being assigned to help on this expedition. Then you've also got Brie Larson, who's playing an anti-war photographer, and the less Jeff talks about Brie Larson, the better, because I do not want to go there. I'm sorry. I'm just being brutally honest. I know how Jeff feels about Brie Larson, and believe me, it's not pretty. So let's just move on. You have Toby Kebbell, who I every time I see him, he's just always playing some sort of bad guy. Like in Fan Four Stick, he's playing Doctor Doom, a very emo Doctor Doom. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, he's playing a rogue primate. Actually, I thought it was interesting because when I was looking up some of the when I was looking up some of the cast information on this. So the guy who does all the motion capture for Kong is Terry No Terry. Um, and I found out that Toei Kebbell provided some of the facial expressions. And I'm like, huh, that's actually pretty cool. I really like that quite a bit. Um,
Yeah, that actually kind of surprised me, and I thought that was an interesting parallel with Andy Serkis. Because Andy Serkis plays Kong, and then Andy Serkis goes on to do Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Then Toby Kebbell comes on to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then Toby Kebbell goes on to be in Kong Skull Island, where he's a soldier but also Kong. And
mhm.
I don't know. I always thought that was like a funny little Uh,
Uh,
yeah, fire.
no, I agree. I kind of like the parallel going on between this. And then, of course, you have John C. Riley playing Hank Marlowe. He's a World War II air Air Force pilot. He crashes on Skull Island with uh, Gunpei Ikari, who is a Japanese World War II pilot, and they spend about I think what was it? What did they say? 28 years on the island, and they become fast friends. And it's by the time that the rest of the cast shows up on Skull Island, he's the only one left. Gunpei was unfortunately killed by the Skull Crawlers. We'll get into the Scroll Crawlers, the Scrolls. Yes, there are scrolls invading. The Skull Crawlers is what I meant to say. But yeah, I think of all the characters in this movie, I think John C. Riley is probably the best human character. And then, of course, there's Kong, our main character himself. And I remember, I mean, both times around, I thought Kong looked pretty solid. I mean, I was still, I mean, the first time I saw a giant ape was, believe it or not Kong, or not King Kong. It was Mighty Pinking Man. You remember that classic ripoff from Hong Kong back in the day in the 70s? Oh, jeez.
That movie's amazing.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. It's a fun watch. Maybe we should talk about that movie at some point. But it's yeah, this is the first time that I've seen a giant CGI monkey. Kong in the King Kong remake doesn't really count because we're talking about a King Kong for the first time since 19 what was it 1960, what was it when what was the when was the first Godzilla versus Kong movie again? It was 19
It
what
was
60
62.
60. That's what I thought. So it's the first time since then, but this time around it's CGI and Kong looks great. And the first time we see Kong with him throwing that palm tree at the tree, I mean at the helicopter, and then like um just the shot of the helicopters approaching Kong in the background silhouette. I mean with the sun in the background. Fucking epic imagery. By the way, I think the cinematography in this movie is actually quite breathtaking to say the least.
So I
Especially with the swooping shots of Skull Island.
I definitely have to say also that the entirety of that opening scene, or not opening scene, uh Kong's first major scene with taking down all the helicopters.
Hmm.
That entire scene feels like it feels like the director just took his action figures and and, and, and directed the whole thing. And then he grabs the one chopper out, and then he uses it as a bat to swing at the other chopper, and then the chopper goes boom, and then Kong pounds his chest and roars.
Honestly, that's the first time I've heard that analogy because I wasn't thinking that this entire time, the entire time I was watching that. But now that you've put it in perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes a lot of fucking sense now, does it?
Yep. And so that's and so that's where I kind of feel like I need to always shift my brain, because there's always the film critiquing side of my head that
Hmm.
says, God, these characters are very uninteresting. The story is very generic. But then on the flip side, giant monkey punching the fuck out of helicopters with with Black Sabbath playing.
I'm
Come
just
on.
thinking of, I'm just, I'm just thinking of, remember Dennis Hopper and Super Mario Brothers? He goes, monkey.
Is that a monkey?
I also remember like the bobblehead in that one Nixon bobblehead, just like bobbing up and down
Oh yeah.
in that one like POV shot, like every time, especially
I
when like the helicopter crashes.
I laughed my ass off at that cut where Kong is like he so like the camera's like kind of tilted up, and you just kind of see two guys in the chopper holding on.
Oh
And
yeah, that's right.
yeah, and then as soon as the chopper moves around, it reveals Kong's face. One guy falls out, the other guy's holding on for dear life. Kong roars, and then the guy's like falling directly into Kong's mouth, and then it
It cuts.
quick cuts to a guy eating a sandwich with like a big crunch. It's fucking great. So
That's it.
there's actually a lot of like subtle dark humor throughout this movie, and actually I gotta say this movie's PG-13, but it's pretty fucking violent, surprisingly. Like,
This
this
definitely
movie
pushes the
doesn't really hold
PG-13. Yeah.
back. Like, there's a fucking cannibal holocaust tribute in this movie. If you know anything about cannibal holocaust,
I mean, yes, I know Cannibal Holocaust. I haven't seen it, but what was the tribute again in question?
so so during the spider scene where like the spider leg goes through the guy's
Oh
throat,
yeah, okay.
so that image is an homage to Cannibal
Is
Holocaust.
it really?
It is, and so I was
Oh.
so when I first saw that, and I knew exactly what they were attributing, my jaw dropped because I'm like, that's a fucked up moment in Cannibal Holocaust, and
Mm.
wow, okay, all right, movie, you went there,
Uh,
and then uh, and then like all these, God, when that skull crawler's like puking out the skeletal remains of Toby Kebbell.
yeah, that was pretty
Oh my
graphic,
god,
especially since that skull still has like blood, like covered. It's
yeah.
still covered in blood.
Oh, then like that one bird swoops up and takes that one dude, and then they're like sawing off all of his limbs.
Right? Yeah, well,
Like,
dude.
holy shit, movie.
I mean, okay, so not to get too sidetracked, but uh, this now that you're talking about this, we've definitely seen kind of like a weird like slow trend of like PG-13 movies being even more violent than R movies, which is fascinating. I mean, sure, PG-13 movies have always like pushed the limits of what you can get away with before it becomes an R-rated movie, but like then again, I feel like in today's day of age, you can get away with a lot more and you could still get a PG-13 rating. I mean, like, it doesn't take much for an R rating. If you say the word fuck like multiple times, that gets you an R rating guaranteed. But like, you can get like, the most like violent, heavy R rated movie ever, and it's still tame compared to a PG-13 movie. Like, I remember when, I remember reading up on all the Batman Return stuff, and like obviously I've seen the movie, but like, dude, like that movie is surprisingly pretty dark for a Batman movie. Like, sure, he's like killing people. He's like almost like he's killing people all over the place, and this is way before like even Batfleck shows up too. So, that movie definitely pushed the boundaries of what you can get away with a PG-13 rating, and so, um, the fact that you're mentioning this, I honestly had not thought about any of this. I just remember going like, well, that I mean, so yeah, when the skull crawler like belches out the skull, I'm like, well, that's a lovely piece of imagery right there.
Yeah, I feel bad for any kid who's taken to this movie and just becoming completely traumatized.
Hmm.
It's like, I just wanted to see the big monkey punch dinosaurs.
You're not expecting for a skull crawler just do that. You're not expecting for this guy. You're not expecting for the guy to get swooped up by like weird like birds and like saw his fucking arm off, like pierce through his fucking like arm off, and you're just like, what the fuck,
And
Jesus.
oh, and so one thing I definitely have to comment on the songs. The songs
Um.
all throughout this movie, it's everything that you would expect to hear in your standard Vietnam War movie,
Mhm.
but just to hear them all back to back, like accompanied with the cool scenery, the jungle backgrounds, and the way I mean, just the fact that moments prior you were seeing giant monsters beating the shit out of each other, and then oh wow, Jimi Hendrix, oh wow, CCR, just oh wow, Black Sabbath, all these great fucking groups, and I think it's such a tragedy that they never released in an album on vinyl.
Mm, yeah.
Man, I would have picked that up right away.
Speaking of the songs, you mentioned that since this is a Vietnam era war movie, I don't remember. You know the song "Unfortunate Son," right? I don't think I heard that song once the entire time.
Yeah, they didn't include that, but I
But
mean,
that's like if you're gonna go the extra mile, you have to include that song because that's like a stereotypical Vietnam War movie song.
but
Oh,
they
for
have run
fuck's sake.
but they have a run through the jungle, so I was so, still CCR, I'll allow it.
Okay. All right. If you insist. All right.
And so I will also say that, this is the absolute biggest that they've ever made Kong. Like, obviously not comparing to the Toho movies, like just in pure American adaptations.
Mm.
The This is the largest Kong has ever been, and I definitely feel that they took full advantage of it,
Mhm.
and I think and I will say, in terms of character development, this movie kind of suffers some of the same issues Godzilla 2014 had,
And I do agree with that.
where I feel the wrong character is focused on, because I think this movie should have focused on John C. Riley. And although, don't get me wrong, I love the Vietnam aesthetic of the movie. I think that helps give it a really unique visual style, and it's clearly a loving tribute to two movies from that era. But at the same time, the story uh, of a World War II pilot crash landing on Skull Island with someone on the opposing side of the war, and they have to work together to survive. I kind of want to see that movie.
I
That's
agree.
that sounds like
I
a
agree on that.
really engaging concept, and I think the director Jordan Von Roberts has said that he wouldn't mind doing a prequel to Skull Island covering just that, but it, it just sounds like one of those things that a director thinks sounds like a cool idea, but just probably won't happen. Like, maybe a graphic novel down the line,
Mhm.
um, but I don't know, because I feel a story like that actually had the potential uh to to generate more interesting character development, because although this is a giant ensemble of characters, you don't really give a shit about anyone.
No,
Like
you really don't.
Tom Hiddleston is generic action man. Brie Larson is generic sidekick chick. Sam Jackson is there's at least more depth to his motivation for wanting to go after Kong. But again, it's very surface level, and John Goodman is very active and very good in the first half of the movie, but as it goes on, he just kind of feels like he doesn't have anything to do afterwards. And then by
His
the time
death is hilarious, though.
his death is awesome.
I just my favorite
Oh
the way he
shit!
dies. He just goes, "Oh shit."
And I will say that may be like, aside from the final battle, that entire sequence is amazing. Like, through that dinosaur
Oh
boneyard.
yeah, through that giant like graveyard.
Yeah. Oh my
Uh
god, the
yeah.
visual aesthetic of that, the way that they just plant a 50 cal machine gun on top of a Triceratops skull. I'm like, fuck, that's cool.
I mean, you said that Tom Hiddleston, generic action man, but like I do love the imagery of him like going through like that green like smoke
Yeah, that was awesome.
with the katana and just like slicing through those birds. I'm like, fuck, that's awesome.
It's like it's like, no matter how much I talk shit about certain elements of this movie, it's just one of those instances where it's like, yeah, it does have all these problems, but that shit's undeniably really fucking cool.
Oh yeah,
So
I am all for
I'm
that.
always torn, and it's not easy to pick apart this movie, and because again, like I said earlier, every pretty much whenever they would make a King Kong movie, uh, you know, as long as you're not making fucking King Kong Lives or something, the it's always trying to be given the most prestigious treatment available. But but for this movie, it's just, fuck it. Let's have some fun, and I think that's more welcoming. So one side of me says this movie's kind of a big mess and doesn't really work, but at the same time, it gets right to the point. It doesn't really bullshit around. It doesn't require much thinking of the viewer, and because it's sometimes hard to convince someone to watch an old 1930s movie, and not everyone has the patience to watch a 3-hour movie like Peter Jackson's version. So if you want to show someone a King Kong movie that uh isn't one of the classic versions, but at least like gives a general the it shows
It
enough
keeps your
it
interest and
it
it
shows
and it like
well,
the
hang on. It shows enough of what makes King Kong an icon of cinema,
right. Mhm.
and, although, like, you're definitely not getting, an Empire State Building sequence, so you're not getting the full Kong story, but you're getting the basic aesthetic of a Kong adventure.
Mhm. Well, I was yeah, I mean, I will say this movie is um compared to the King Kong remake and the original King Kong, those movies take their time with their story. Um it's pretty I mean, they're pretty well paced. This one is like the pacing's not too bad either, but like it knows when to get the hell out of Dodge. I'm not saying that the other King Kong movies don't, but this movie is like this is this is essentially King Kong for the popcorn audience. Um, if that makes any sense, because it very much keeps your attention. It doesn't bore you with like any emotional romantic like elements that King Kong traditionally has, except maybe between Brie Larson and Kong, but that's like not really there. It's just I mean it's there, but it's not really like all too important. It's just to
It's it
establish a
it
commotion. A connection of some sort,
it's
but that's
very
about it.
surface level because
Hmm.
if you look at the connection that Naomi Watts had with Kong in the 2005 film, you absolutely felt that, and that was the heart of the story in the end. Um, but with this, they're obviously not going for that, and
Hmm.
I think that was kind of shoehorned in just because it's it's tradition. You have to you always have to have Kong uh, try to protect the girl from some kind of threat.
Very much a damsel in distress kind of thing with Kong.
Yeah, and it's that it's just because every time there's ever been a Kong movie, that even in they pulled that in Son of Kong, and even the Toho movies, and I think even King Kong Lives, pulled that. So it just kind of comes with it comes with the territory, basically.
Hmm. Well, I think there another difference I've kind of noticed. Um, maybe you would remember more, but I don't remember really there being human antagonists in the original King Kong story. Maybe I'm completely wrong. To be fair, it's been a long time since I've seen the 2005 movie. So maybe you could
Yeah,
remind me there.
Carl.
But
Or sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like in here for sure, there's more of a human antagonist element. But before we get there, maybe I'll let Jeff finish your thought.
Yeah, so in terms of villains, I would say in both the 1933 and 2005 versions, Carl Denham was. I wouldn't say he was ever meant to be a villain. Like, definitely an antagonist in some form. Because he is kind of a greedy businessman, and is is looking to profit off of Kong. Because his film project went to shit, and so it was his greed and ambition that brought Kong to New York City, and everything went tits up, and so by the end, that's when he delivers that infamous line. It wasn't the airplanes; it was Beauty killed the Beast, and that was supposed to uh, kind of showcase the lesson he's learned of hey, probably probably shouldn't have done that.
Let nature be nature. The old saying. I
life
remember.
life finds a way.
Not exactly that line, but like so. But yes, that does apply here. But I was gonna say so. Quick side about me. I used to be in Boy Scouts, and they always say like leave no trace, and that meant like if whenever you were out in nature, don't leave any of your shit behind, and let everything be as it is. So like don't take nature home with you, otherwise it will kick you back in the face. That old saying about karma. So yeah, I totally get it in this case. Probably not a good idea to have brought a giant ape back to civilization, because then civilization ain't gonna be very thrilled about that shit unless it's uh yeah yeah just let's just leave shit alone. Kind of like how the rest of the world should just leave shit alone, for God's sakes. But that's neither here nor there. But I mean, we've mentioned it before. Kong. By the way, I obviously Kong is huge, but as John C. Riley or as Marlowe puts it, Kong's only a teenager, kind of in this movie, correct?
Yeah, it's uh kind of a quickly mentioned line, but John C. Riley does mention that Kong is an adolescent and he is still growing. So by the time because this obviously takes place in the early
1973 was that year.
early 70s, and Godzilla is meant to take place in current day. So in between that time gap, by the time you get to Godzilla versus Kong, he's going to be significantly larger than when you last saw him in this movie.
Yeah, it's going to be as tall as Godzilla, for the Godzilla versus Kong. And well, I just want to say right now, cannot wait to see that movie. After seeing Godzilla King of the Monsters, right after watching this, I'm like, I cannot wait to see that go down.
Okay, yeah, and I must say with like I know we had COVID and everything, but man, I have never been dick teased with a movie more in my entire life, because with Godzilla versus Kong, it was supposed to come out in, I think, originally March of 2020, and then got pushed back to May, and then November, and then uh and then before that, COVID started happening, and then it got pushed back to like May of next year, and uh then we were always told, oh, you might get a trailer maybe around Halloween, around maybe Christmas, and maybe in the new year. And it just they like we had no pictures, we had no trailers. All we had were all we had were a bunch of toys that were shipped out to stores
They were just
before.
teasing us. Yeah.
Yeah, because prior to the movie getting delayed, they already had they already had toys hitting the shelves, and it was kind of too late to really recall those. So those toys were our only glimpse to show, yes, this movie actually exists. And the day that trailer dropped, man, that thing went viral fast. Like
Oh yeah, dude. I
I think
remember when that trailer dropped, and several guys at work who are like huge like Kong and Godzilla fanatics, they're like, "Oh." It was like Avengers all over again with this trailer.
so. Yeah, because I must confess, I was never a Marvel guy. I didn't read comics growing up or anything. So with the Avengers, I got pretty into the movies for a while, so I was able to get excited, for the Avengers movies, but there was a slight disconnect for me because these were characters that I was only introduced to because of the Marvel movies. But with the MonsterVerse, these are all characters. These monsters. These are the characters that I grew up with, that I became super familiar with, and so Godzilla versus Kong, I kind of perceive it as my Avengers, the one like the movie that I
That sounds
can
about right.
the one that I can get super freaking amped for
Yeah.
because these are the characters that I grew up on.
Remind me to tell you something later after the show, because I think you're gonna get a kick out of this. But sorry, viewers, you can't listen to this part. This is off the air material. But um,
Oh my.
oh my, indeed. Since we're talking about Kong, yes, he's. We mentioned that we before we got going back to Kong. Um, we mentioned that yes, he's very much in his adolescence. But of course, he is not the only creature featured in this movie. So let's talk about some of the creatures in this movie. Um, we have so right after we see Kong, we see and we mentioned a lot of these creatures earlier, but like one of the most impressive creatures I saw was like that giant like water bison with like the giant antlers.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing
That was what was sorry.
it was, so I will say there's at least a decent enough variety of creatures
Mhm.
throughout this movie. I just wish there were fucking dinosaurs, man.
I get that. I get that. I mean, because I remember when I watched the King Kong remake from 2005, um, watching Kong like destroy the fuck out of two T Rexes was probably one of the more epic things you probably ever watched. It was also very satisfying too. Um, I remember I didn't get that far into the game because I wasn't truly invested in the game. I'll be honest, but I know how was that boss fight by the way in the game?
Oh, against the T-Rexes?
Yeah,
Oh, dude, so in the game, there's levels you play as Adrian Brody's character,
right, right. I
and,
do remember that.
then other levels you play as Kong. Uh, so when you're so when you're playing as, what's his name? Jack.
Mhm.
So when you're playing as him,
It's a first
there's
person shooter, right?
yes. So there's no way to take down the T-Rex as a human. So all you can really do is uh so often you'll have a couple guys that are on the journey with you, and sometimes they'll have to open a door, and you need to keep the T-Rex distracted while they're slowly trying to get this door open. And so that means you just have to keep running around and distract the T-Rex and just make sure they don't eat your friends,
Right.
because the T-Rex is indestructible and there's not a lot of places to hide. You're just frantically running around, and if it chomps on you once, you're dead.
Mhm.
And so even when I was a kid, my anxiety was amped up to 11, and even as an adult, it still scares the shit out of me. It puts you on so much edge, and because admittedly, the graphics are very well done and the sound design is completely on point. Like it looks like they ripped the animation straight from the movie. It's very well done. And but when you're playing as Kong, it's not as good. It's kind of just like a generic button masher and feels a little more slapped together, but it's okay. But the first person stuff I absolutely love. I guess this is now a review of the Peter Jackson Kong game. Uh,
We really shouldn't be talking about this until we actually talk about the King Kong movie, the 1933 and the 2005 remake. But here's just a little snippet then, I guess. But anyways, going back to the creatures and Kong. So yeah, we have a very nice variety. We mentioned the giant water bison with the giant antlers. We mentioned the giant bamboo spider crab that's in there. We mentioned the birds with like beaks that will rip your fucking arm off in just like one swoop.
There's the giant octopus, which totally has to be a tribute to the original King Kong versus Godzilla.
Really? I don't. To be fair, I haven't seen that one. Um,
Oh, you haven't?
no, I have never. I've actually never seen the
Okay,
original
okay.
Toho movie.
So I want you to go watch it. It's on YouTube.
Oh, it
Go
is.
go watch the original version and watch it with the context of, oh, this is the movie Jeff had to grow up on. And then Godzilla versus Kong comes out, and then you see the night and day comparison.
Okay, hold
Because
on. I'm
I've
just looking to see. Oh my god, it is on YouTube, and it's a. Oh shit. Okay, I gotta watch this after this review.
it's fantastic. Yeah,
It's in
it's
English too. All right.
yeah, there's a there's two versions, and I need to watch the original Japanese version because it kind of got the same treatment as the original Gojira, where they where for the American release
Right, because they
they
brought in Raymond Burr to do the Americanized version, and then when they
exactly.
did,
And
and
so
then when they did Godzilla 1985, they brought him back to connect it again, right?
yeah, and so for King Kong versus Godzilla, they shot a bunch of barely connected scenes with American actors to just give giant exposition dumps.
Hmm.
A lot of the music is actually ripped straight from some of the Universal monster movies. Like I think most of the soundtrack is either from the Wolfman or and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And when it came to but the main difference between that and the Japanese version is the Japanese version is actually a giant commentary on I think the television industry that was centered in Japan around that time.
Oh,
How
really? Okay.
and it was a lot more because I've seen about half of the Japanese version, and I was shocked to see the amount of scenes that were cut out. And it's I still need to watch the full thing, but just from the first like 30 minutes I saw, it's already a much better movie.
I kind of figured that much. I mean, I know with the so I'll be honest with you, the so I have seen the original Godzilla movie, but not the actual Japanese version. The first version I saw was the Raymond Burr version.
Watch the
Um,
Japanese version.
that's
It's
what I'm kind of thinking that I'm kind of thinking I should at
yeah,
this point.
because I didn't see the original Japanese version of Godzilla until just a few years ago when I got the Criterion Blu-ray, and it's so my perception of the original Godzilla movie was always yeah, it's pretty good, but I never saw the Japanese version.
And the Japanese version, I imagine, is a far superior film.
It's a fucking masterpiece.
I figured that much. So I guess real quickly before we jump back, the version. So I found it on YouTube, but here's my question: is it the American version?
It is.
Fuck.
So the actually I did find the Japanese version on one of those web archive websites.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean. But I guess my question is: should I watch the American version, or would you rather I watch the Japanese version?
um I think I mean cuz regardless it's still the same cheesy monster movie in the end,
Of
but
course.
uh I don't know because the English dub is so goddamn cheesy and stupid that it's fucking hilarious.
Okay. I guess I'll have to make that decision on my own at some point. But anyways, so back to Skull Island. Jesus Christ.
After, like, 20 minutes of of different avenues of discussion.
Sorry. And I'll be honest, this time for a change, I'm not the one who's sidetracking for a change.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh, shut up. I love you too. Okay, so in lieu of the dinosaurs, oh, okay, there is one other creature I thought was actually pretty cool. So at one point, right before he dies, so Tony Kebbell's character, aka Jack Chapman, before he dies, he shoots up a he shoots up a log, and it turns out to be like this weird like bug like creature. And when he shoots him, I didn't write it in my notes, but I'm just like, oh, that poor log. Just want to be left alone. He's not trying to hurt you. And then he turns around, blood splattered all over his walkie-talkie. Poor Toby Kebbell. He can't catch a fucking brick in his movies, can he?
So
Oh well.
I also love that this movie is totally propped by so many narrative cliches, right down to
A
Toby
jump
Kebbell.
scare.
Well, right down to Toby Kebbell having a newborn son, and this is his last mission ever, and he's got to get back to little Billy.
uh, Dear Billy, you think we're in the shit now? Yes, we are.
And oh yeah, and I also just realized that as these movies go on, they just start implementing more of the main cast from Straight Outta Compton.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I hate to say this, but I haven't seen that movie all the way through.
What the fuck?
I know. I've been meaning to watch it. Actually, it's not true. I did watch it. I watched like the first 15 minutes of it. It was playing at work, and
Doesn't count.
I know it doesn't. Ah, shit. I know. There's a lot of movies I got to watch. And that's definitely one of those movies. But I've liked. I will say I definitely liked what I saw.
Film
So
major, my ass.
shut the fuck up. God damn it. Uh, but okay, so let's talk about the real villains of the movie: Samuel Jackson and Skullcrawlers. We mentioned that he's just playing he's playing essentially Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now. Kind of. Anyone who's ever seen Apocalypse Now knows that like Colonel Kurtz has kind of like gone off the deep end. He's like, yeah, no, and boy, he had to come find me, and he's just kind of gone off the reservation. So very much here, Packard has gone off the reservation, and he's like he's very bitter about losing the Vietnam War, and so he finds in Kong the opportunity to try and redeem himself and kill Kong before he thinks Kong will take out everyone else. But I mean, yes, Kong like destroys most of his men, but the truth is Kong was defending his home and everything. So like, yes, Kong did, but Kong's not really the villain. He's just, he was defending the Iwi, the people who live on the island, and the rest of the island itself. So can you blame Kong? Not really, because you understand why he does it. And then Sam Jackson is just this bitter military colonel. Um, and I love the way he dies. He's just like um, Kong just looks at him, and he's just like, well, first of all, before we get there, like, so he has this idea of like burning Kong with like napalm, and it pretty much works. And Kong's kind of like down for the count for a bit, and then with intervention from Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson's characters, they get the rest of his men to turn on him, and they run away from like the main giant skull crawler. And right before he dies, like Kong just looks at him, and Samuel Jackson's like, "Burn in hell, you mother!" And he's just crushed by Kong's fist.
Okay, I will
And
say
like, what a fitting ending.
it's kind of bullshit how they wasted their F bomb on not
Mhm.
Samuel L. Jackson.
I know, because Sam Jackson. Okay, anyone who's just in case you don't know Sam Jackson, unless you've only seen an MCU film, if you ever seen a Sam Jackson portrayal in any
He's the
movie,
king of the motherfuckers.
oh yeah. So okay, side story. So I was at Comic Con in 2018, right? I was in Hall H, and that's a whole nother side story. But like the point is, I saw the Glass panel. So this was for M Night Shyamalan's Glass movie, and Sam Jackson was there, and he totally dropped a motherfucker like right there. The moment he dropped the motherfucker, the entire audience just erupted in cheer. I'm just like, come on. Of course it's Sam Jackson. He's gonna get away with it. It's like, and then another thing too. So when I used to work at a movie theater, I ran into Colin Farrell, and he was there with I think his nephews or his kids. And I know Colin had worked with Sam Jackson on SWAT, and that's a pretty fun movie too. But I was like, I asked him like, hey, so how often did Sam Jackson drop f bomb? He's like, and Colin Farrell's like every day.
I believe it.
But yeah, they totally wasted the motherfucker uh, on Sam Jackson. Just like how like the ending of like Infinity War at the very end, like the after credit scene, he's like motherfucker, and he just disappears. So yeah, they totally wasted it on him. But anyways, so we have the skull crawlers, and Jeff, what do you think of the skull crawlers in this movie?
They're fine.
You said that about the Mutos in Godzilla. You don't have any real opinion on them?
They're they're fine. They they're monsters. I mean, like we're fucking Americans can't design monsters for shit for some reason.
uh,
We suck at it, and
are you?
we need to get our shit together, everyone. Come on. We
Mhm.
like we have the chance to make multi-million-dollar monster movies now. Like let's make some really crazy fucking designs.
Well, not everyone is H.R. Geiger and or did I say H.R. Geiger? I think it's H.R. Giger. I could be wrong, but not everyone's H.R. Giger or Stan Winston or whatnot anymore. Those are the greats, and unfortunately, they're not here anymore. They have long since passed, which is upsetting. But I do agree they are very generic. Yeah, if I'm going to be real, they're very just generic creatures. They're just there to provide an evil monster threat, or just like a monster for Godzilla to. Godzilla. Oh my god! I think I really just want to talk about Godzilla at this point. But yes, they're there for King Kong to fight. And by the way, I do love that ending fight where like so Kong uses like the remnants of a wrecked ship to use against
Oh
the
yeah,
main
like the
skull
fact that
crawler. And that's pretty fucking awesome.
the fact that he basically uses a boat propeller as brass knuckles.
Oh, it's awesome.
Fuck, that's cool.
Here, okay, so that's one thing I would like to say that Kong has an advantage of Godzilla's for sure. Godzilla's got the atomic breath, he's got his tail, he's got his ferocity, but Kong is a little bit different. Yes, he's got. I think Kong has a lot of wit, and he's able to use the environment around him
Yeah,
to his advantage.
absolutely.
And that's really gonna. And if you've seen the trailers for Godzilla versus Kong, it definitely looks like he's gonna be using a bit of Godzilla against Godzilla. So that'll be interesting to see.
Well, and I think that's part of why I'm so excited for the movie is that there's definite pros and cons uh, to both creatures, abilities. So I because Adam Wingard has gone on record to say that no, there will be a definitive winner. One of these monsters is going down, and like they're not going to Batman v Superman us. It's going to be a legit fucking throwdown.
Now
And
the question is, do you think one of those monsters is going to die, or is one of
yes,
them going to succeed, or one of them going to? You think so? I've had quite a few people talk to about this, and they really think that at least one of the monsters is definitely going to win, but the other monster is just going to yield.
I mean, in the trailer they straight up say Kong bows to no one, and given the ending of King of the Monsters, I don't think Godzilla would sell for that either.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't think it won. I don't think. I mean, I have a lot of friends who think that it's going to be like a draw. Well, like one of them's going to win the fight, but then they're both going to team up to fight the supposed main uh, threat of the film. But we'll wait and
If they do, I'm gonna say that is complete bullshit
mm, okay. Well,
because
we'll just have to wait.
I want the brutal fight to the death.
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
The only way I would be able to accept an outcome like this is if there's a secondary threat, then they temporarily team up to fight him. But then once that thing's defeated, then
You really want one of these characters to die, don't you?
yes, because we've waited almost 60 years for this battle, and I don't want to compromise by some bullshit cop out by saying, "Oh, but they like one's pinned down and basically just says, "Okay, timeout, timeout. No, no, thank you. Okay,
Hmm.
you win, you win." No. I want a fight to the fucking death.
Well, just prepare to be disappointed then, just in case. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like, me personally, I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those two concedes.
Well, when the tagline of the movie says one will fall and you don't deliver on that promise, I'm going to say fuck you, movie.
Well, it's also called marketing to get people into the fucking theaters, for God's sake.
And
So
it's
of
also called
course,
a lie.
I mean, you want to harken back to our previous episode. I mean, they fucking used Bryan Cranston as a lure to get people into theaters, for God's sakes. And he's only in that movie for 30 fucking minutes. And we think he should have been in there for far fucking longer. And Jesus Christ, we love Bryan Cranston so fucking much. Yeah, Bryan Cranston should have not died in Godzilla 2014. Thank you, everybody. Jesus fucking Christ on a stick.
He should not have fucking died.
Exactly. So, I do. So yeah, I do like how this movie ends, though. It's very heartwarming. Heartwarming. It leads into the credits. It's so John C. Riley, his character Marlowe, returns home. It's very fitting. So he talks about like he mentioned that like he likes having a hot dog in one hand and a beer in the other, watching the Cubs play, and he comes home to his wife. His son is now, I think it. I couldn't tell what fucking age his son is. He either looked like a teenager or like the most obvious like 20 something year old playing a teenager. I couldn't really fucking tell, but like that kid didn't look like he was in his teens.
I mean, I will say though, like that was a genuinely sweet scene.
Yes, it was.
Like
Yes, it
I
was.
liked how it had the nice little music playing, and it there no words mentioned. It I don't know. It was an unexpected touching moment because the movie itself was kind of devoid of true uh true emotional character moments,
Hmm.
and it's a little sucky that we don't really get something like that until the actual end credits, but I mean, hey, it's better than nothing.
I agree. Yeah, and then of course you get the post-credit scene, and they're pretty much reveal that Kong's not the only monster out there, and you see cave paintings of Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. You see Mothra, you see Rodan, and then of course you see Godzilla throwing down with Kong, and then it cuts to black, and then you hear that very famous Godzilla roar, and that's how the movie ends officially. So. It's a nice little lead into Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that's going to be our very next episode. But before we finish things out, so Jeff, overall, I think it's safe to say that, at least for me, I think that, oh God, I just really want to talk about Godzilla. God damn it. But I think for me that Kong Skull Island it's as you put it, it's nice background noise, but admittedly there are some really awesome like monster and action bits here and there. There's only like one real human character in the movie that I actually really cared about the most, and he really should have been the focus. Of course, that's John C. Reilly's character Marlowe. I think the performances are all pretty solid, but they're just they're there to serve a point. It's kind of like how we mentioned in our Godzilla uh, installment that like all the characters are just like plot devices. They're just there to serve their purpose. Um, and John C. Riley is really the one giving it the emotional depth that the movie really, I wouldn't say deserve, but it could definitely go for. But he's not focused enough, and that's kind of a shame. But overall, I do think that Kong Skull Island, second time around for me, pretty fun, but it's not something I would normally put on. Maybe, like you said, just background noise. It's just there to like, it's there while I play maybe video games or do something else. But yeah, uh, I do recommend it. But overall, it's fine. It's there.
Yeah,
It's just made there.
it's a movie that definitely didn't need to exist, but at the same time I'm kind of glad it does exist because it's because again, King Kong is a character that that's always kind of had a tight, uh, kind of like a tight legal history around it, and so that's why not as many movies have been made around Kong. And there's a whole legal history to when the '76 version was coming out, and then the Peter Jackson version was in development hell for many years, uh, and so it just kind of felt refreshing that after Peter Jackson is able to tell his epic basically, and it's able to kind of morph into its own piece of pop culture history, that we're at a point now where Kong's kind of been there and done it all with that original premise. And now it's just at a point where, you know what, let's let's take this genre of film, the Vietnam War film, and find a way to implement King Kong. And it felt like a really experimental melding of genres that, while in the end it doesn't really churn out a memorable movie going experience for the most part, in what it set out to do was basically have fun with Kong and show him in a way that hasn't really been displayed before. Do something a little different, but not but doesn't stray far enough to where the character is unrecognizable from his origin. So it falls flat on its ass in terms of character detail and development, and you definitely it's a very hollow movie. But if you're just looking for a fun creature feature with very good special effects, and well, plus it's a major advantage that the climax of this movie is in broad daylight. You can see everything perfectly. There's the cinematography is stunning. Some of the imagery throughout this movie is absolutely stunning, and there's definitely a unique style, and the color palette is gorgeous. So it's hard for me to say that this is a bad movie in any way, shape, or form, because it's really not. You just kind of have to manage your expectations going into it. You're not. It's not gonna change your life. It's not going to inspire you, or if you were to show a younger kid this, it won't spark his imagination quite as unique as maybe the original or even the 2005 version would. But in terms of just being a fun, schlocky summer blockbuster, a B movie with a budget, Kong Skull Island is definitely better one of the better candidates in that genre.
Yeah, so overall, it's pretty clear that that Kong Skull Island is a fun time. Just maybe shut your brain off. Don't think about it too much, but it's fun in the long run, in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, that's gonna do it for the second part of the legendary MonsterVerse. Um, so come back next time when we take a look at at one hell of a movie, I think, um, in Godzilla, King of the Monsters. In the meantime, though, be sure to check us out on our socials. Be sure to follow the Instagram page at TNAAPcast. So that's TNAAPcast. If you find us on Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a nice 5-star review if you can. Also, just a quick announcement, we have launched a YouTube page. So for whatever reason, you don't have Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but you want to be able to still listen to the show, you can actually listen to the show there. And also, you can also leave a comment and like, and also subscribe over there. So be sure to check us out there. And I'm pretty sure this episode's going to be on YouTube too. So, like, what the hell, dude? But okay. So, anyways, we'll be back for Godzilla King of the Monsters. And thanks for listening to another fine installment of Two Nerdskis and a Podcast. So, this is Eric.
And this is Jeff.
So, all right, folks, we'll see you then. Stay shiny. Have a wonderful time. See ya.
Next level.